I never imagined that 11 years of marriage could collapse because of 5 sentences. Not screaming matches, not slammed doors, not a dramatic confession or a suitcase dragged across the floor. Just 5 chosen sentences delivered calmly, almost gently, that dismantled my life with surgical precision. My husband Daniel didn't try to destroy our marriage loudly. He did it quietly, methodically, as if he were testing a structure to see exactly how much pressure it could withstand before it finally cracked. At the time, I didn't understand what he was doing. I thought he was just drifting. Looking back now, with painful clarity, I see the truth. He wasn't confused. He was calculating, measuring my reactions, studying my silence, testing how much emotional damage he could inflict before I finally broke. What he never anticipated was this: I wouldn't break the way he expected. Instead of crying, begging, or exploding, something inside me went still, sharp, alert. And once that switch flipped, I began watching him the way you watch someone who has already decided to leave, only they want you to be the one blamed for it. It began on a Monday morning that felt completely ordinary. I was in our kitchen, barefoot on the cold tile, flipping eggs in a pan while the coffee brewed. Daniel walked in, already dressed for his workout, phone glued to his hand, eyes never meeting mine. Without even looking up, he said casually, "You know what I've been thinking lately? We probably just settled for each other when we got married." He said it the same way someone might comment on the weather. My hand froze mid-air. The spatula nearly slipped from my fingers. Coffee spilled over the edge of the mug, dark liquid spreading across the counter. But I barely noticed. 11 years. 11 years of shared grief, shared goals, family holidays, career sacrifices, quiet support in moments no one else ever saw. And suddenly, I was someone he settled for. When I asked him what he meant, he shrugged, still scrolling, and said, "Forget I said anything." But I couldn't. Those words followed me all day, wrapped around my chest, pressed against my ribs. Because deep down, beneath the shock, beneath the denial, I knew something fundamental had shifted, and that was only the first sentence. I was 32 when I married Daniel. I wasn't naive. I had built a career before I built a marriage. I worked in corporate operations for a logistics firm. Long hours, sharp deadlines, structured thinking. I wasn't the emotional type. At least, that's what I used to believe. Daniel was different from me in ways that felt complementary at the time. Softer, charismatic, the kind of man who could light up a room without trying too hard. We met at a mutual friend's engagement party. He spilled wine on my dress. I laughed instead of getting angry. He told me later that was the moment he knew he wanted to see me again. Back then, he looked at me like I was a discovery. Our first 2 years were uncomplicated. Weekend trips, late-night conversations about where we wanted to live, whether we wanted children, what kind of life we envisioned. We weren't impulsive, we planned. That's what I loved about us. We built carefully. When we bought our house in year 3 of marriage, I cried in the empty living room while holding the keys. Daniel wrapped his arms around me and whispered, "This is ours. We did this." And we did. We survived layoffs, the loss of his grandmother, my father's surgery, career shifts, sleepless nights. We never screamed at each other, never had dramatic breakups or separations. We were stable, predictable, solid, or at least I thought we were. If I search my memory honestly, the signs didn't begin last week. They began years ago, subtle and quiet. Daniel used to include me in everything: ideas, doubts, work frustrations. Then gradually he stopped. It wasn't abrupt, just less sharing. Fewer, "What do you think?" and more, "It's handled." At dinners with friends, he sometimes joked about what could have been if he'd taken a job overseas earlier in life. He would say it lightly, but his eyes lingered a second too long. His family had always liked me. His parents welcomed me warmly. His sister Lisa treated me like a true sister-in-law. Holidays were easy, comfortable. There was never hostility from his side. But over the last year, something changed in him, not in them. He began exercising more, buying new clothes, guarding his phone, not aggressively, but deliberately. I noticed the shift, but told myself I was overthinking. Marriage has seasons, I told myself. We had no major fights, no betrayal, no explosive arguments, just a quiet thinning of connection. Looking back, I realized something painful. I was working to maintain the marriage. He was evaluating it. There's a difference. I planned vacations 6 months ahead. He began taking longer business trips. I initiated conversations about long-term investments. He asked abstract questions about alternate life paths. But I trusted him because I believed stability meant safety. I believed that because we had never dramatically hurt each other, we were immune to collapse. I was wrong. That Monday sentence, "maybe we just settled," wasn't spontaneous. It was the first visible crack in something that had already been weakening for a long time. And by Tuesday evening, I understood that crack wasn't accidental. It was deliberate. Tuesday evening removed any illusion that Monday had been careless. We ordered Thai food from the restaurant we used to visit when we were dating, back when everything between us felt intentional and warm. I set the table the way I always did: cloth napkins, real plates, small rituals that meant something to me. Daniel barely touched his food. He kept staring at the wall behind me like there was something more interesting there than our marriage. Then he looked at me directly and said, slowly, deliberately, "Sometimes I wonder how completely different my life would have turned out if I'd made different choices back then." The word choices hung in the air, not subtle, not accidental, sharp. I kept my tone steady. "What choices?" He shrugged. "Career, where we chose to live, relationships." The way he said relationships wasn't neutral. It was stretched, intentionally heavy. My fingers tightened slightly around my fork. "Are you saying you regret marrying me?" He gave that small half smile that never reached his eyes. "I'm just thinking out loud." No, he wasn't. He was placing a seed, a suggestion, a fracture. I forced myself to breathe slowly. "It's never too late to make different choices," I said quietly, "if you feel that strongly." For a split second, something flickered across his face. Surprise, maybe even alarm. He hadn't expected agreement. He had expected emotion. He had expected me to panic. Instead, I gave him space, and it unsettled him. Wednesday afternoon, I suggested we visit his parents that weekend. We hadn't seen them in months, and his mother had called twice asking when we'd come by. Daniel didn't hesitate. I honestly can't keep pretending to enjoy things I stopped caring about a long time ago. The statement was flat, final. It wasn't about his parents. It was about everything. Our routines, our home, our shared life. I felt something cold settle inside me. "How long have you been pretending?" I asked calmly. He blinked, genuinely startled, then defensive. "You're reading too much into this. I'm asking a simple question." He ran a hand through his hair. "I don't know, months, maybe longer. I just don't feel the same." There it was. Not anger, not conflict, withdrawal. He wasn't attacking me. He was detaching. Thursday night delivered the cruelest sentence yet. We were standing side by side at the bathroom sink, brushing our teeth in silence. The mirror reflected two people who looked like a married couple. Close, familiar, but emotionally, we were miles apart. He caught my eye in the mirror and asked, "Do you ever look at other couples who seem genuinely happy and wonder what that must actually feel like?" Notice what he didn't say. He didn't say us. He excluded me entirely from happiness. I rinsed my mouth, held his gaze in the mirror, and answered quietly, "Yes, I've been wondering the same thing." His jaw tightened. He wasn't expecting that. He expected tears, or denial, or reassurance. Instead, I matched him. The shift between us became almost tangible. That night, he went to bed early. I stayed in the living room in darkness, replaying the week. 5 sentences. 5 precise incisions. None of them loud. all of them calculated. That was the moment I stopped seeing this as emotional confusion and started seeing it as positioning. Daniel wasn't trying to fix anything. He was preparing an exit, and he wanted me to be the one who opened the door first. Friday morning felt deceptively peaceful. Sunlight filtered through the kitchen windows. The coffee machine hummed softly. The house looked exactly the same as it had for 11 years. Stable, lived in, safe. Daniel sat across from me at the table, scrolling through his phone. I watched his fingers move, quick and controlled. His face was unreadable. Then he put the phone down. I think we both understand this isn't working anymore. No anger, no sadness, no apology. Just a clean administrative statement, like a manager discussing restructuring. For a moment, I heard nothing. Even the hum of the refrigerator seemed distant. I set my mug down carefully. I made sure my hands didn't shake. "You're right," I said evenly. "It isn't." His eyes snapped up. That wasn't the reaction he expected. I stood, walked around the table slowly, leaned down, and kissed the top of his head the way I had done 1,000 ordinary mornings before. "Thank you for being honest," I said quietly, and I walked away. He called after me. "Wait, that's it?" I paused at the doorway but didn't turn around. What else is there to say? Silence. Confusion. The energy in the room shifted. For the first time all week, he looked unsettled. That was the moment something inside me locked into place. Not heartbreak. Clarity. If he wanted distance, I would give him space so vast he wouldn't recognize the terrain. The following week, I stopped reacting emotionally. I started observing. It began with his phone. Daniel had always been casual with it, leaving it on the counter, letting me check directions when he drove, sharing memes with me without hesitation. Now it was face down. Always. Password changed. Screen angled away when I walked into a room. If it buzzed, he reached for it before the sound finished. Tuesday evening, we were eating dinner on the couch. His phone vibrated on the coffee table. He practically lunged for it. "Work," he muttered. "It's 8:15, I replied calmly. You know how demanding things are lately. I did know how his job worked. His company had a strict no-contact policy after 6 p.m. for work-life balance. He had praised that benefit for years. I didn't argue. I stored it. Wednesday morning, his phone rang on the nightstand while he was in the shower. Unknown number. The screen lit up, and I only glanced at it. When he stepped out and saw the missed call, something flickered across his face. Pale. Tight. "Spam," he said too quickly, grabbing it. A minute later, I heard the shower turn back on. Then faint audio. A voicemail playing under running water. He came out acting composed. "Everything okay?" I asked, sipping coffee. "Fine," he said sharply, then softened. "Just stressed about a presentation." "What presentation?" I asked gently. He froze. There wasn't one. We both knew that. But I smiled and nodded as if satisfied. "Hope it goes well." The relief on his face confirmed more than any confession would have. By Thursday, he wasn't subtle anymore. Calls taken in the hallway. Texts answered at midnight under the blanket. The glow of the screen lighting his face. Mood swings between distant and artificially cheerful. He wasn't drifting. He was elsewhere. Thursday night, I tested him. He was curled on the couch, smiling faintly at his phone. I sat beside him, closer than usual. His shoulders stiffened instantly. "Don't let me interrupt," I said lightly. "You seem focused." "Just a friend from college," he replied. "Anyone I know?" Long pause. "I don't think so." "That's nice," I said. "It's good to reconnect." He studied my face like he was searching for cracks. He found none. Friday morning, he tried again. "We should talk seriously," he said over breakfast. "About what?" "About us." I tilted my head. "What about us?" "We're not connected anymore," he said, frustration leaking through. "Emotionally?" I asked. "Yes." "And whose decision was that?" His mouth opened, closed. He had no answer. Because deep down, he knew. He was building a narrative, slowly, carefully, and he needed me to play the unstable wife. But I wasn't unraveling. I was documenting. That weekend, while he was out with friends, I opened my laptop and created a folder, not titled Feelings, not titled Marriage. It was titled Observations and Evidence, because I had crossed a line internally. I was no longer a wife trying to repair something. I was a woman studying the strategy of the man who had decided to leave, but wanted to control the story, and I was done being written into someone else's script. The moment I titled that folder Observations and Evidence, something fundamental changed inside me. Not anger, not revenge, precision. For years, I had been the emotional anchor in our marriage, the one who initiated hard conversations, the one who patched cracks before they widened, the one who apologized first, even when I wasn't sure I was wrong. Now I went quiet. And in that quiet, I began to see clearly. I wasn't trying to catch him in something scandalous. I was trying to understand the pattern, because patterns don't lie. Monday night, Daniel claimed he was working late. He texted at 6:42 p.m. Back-to-back meetings, don't wait up. At 7:03 p.m., our shared credit card was charged at a wine bar across town. I didn't confront him. I screenshotted it. Time-stamped. Neutral language. No emotion in the file. Tuesday, I called his sister Lisa, under the pretense of checking in. We chatted lightly at first. Then she hesitated. Has Daniel been okay lately? She asked carefully. Why? He's been asking strange hypothetical questions, she said, about divorce, about whether filing first changes perception, about how courts view emotional distance. My stomach tightened, but my voice stayed steady. That's interesting. I thought you two were fine, she added. He made it sound like you've been pulling away. There it was. Narrative construction. He wasn't just emotionally detaching. He was planting context, positioning himself. I thanked her and ended the call. Then I created a new section in my document, Legal Positioning Indicators. Wednesday night, he came home unusually cheerful. Too cheerful. He kissed my cheek lightly. You seem quiet lately. I'm listening more, I replied. To what? To you. He held my gaze a fraction too long. He knew something had shifted. He just didn't know how much. Thursday afternoon, while he was at the gym, I reviewed our bank statements more carefully. Small weekly transfers, consistent, to an account I didn't recognize. Not large enough to trigger suspicion, but steady enough to signal preparation. It wasn't about the money. It was about intent, financial separation, strategic, deliberate. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the ceiling. For a split second, grief tried to break through. 11 years of partnership. And he was preparing an exit like a business negotiation. Did I miss something? I whispered to the empty room. Had I ignored signs? Had I been too trusting? I replayed conversations in my head. Vacations, anniversaries, quiet evenings on the couch. He hadn't looked unhappy, but now I realized something devastating. He had been disengaging long before I noticed. That night, I decided to confront him. Not explosively, but carefully. We were sitting in the living room. Daniel, I said softly. He muted the television. Yeah? Are you planning to leave me? The question landed between us like glass. He blinked. Where is this coming from? It's a yes or no question. He leaned back, defensive. You're being dramatic. I'm being direct. He rubbed his temples. I've just been thinking about our future. With or without me? Silence. There it was again. That hesitation. That calculation. You're imagining problems, he said finally. I haven't done anything. The choice of words struck me. I haven't done anything. Not, I would never hurt you. Not, I love you. Just procedural denial. I studied his face carefully. Then why are you preparing? I asked quietly. Preparing for what? For something that requires you to frame me as distant. His expression hardened. That's unfair. Is it? His jaw tightened. I don't know what you think you're seeing. I nodded slowly. That's fine. And I stood up. He expected tears. He expected escalation. Instead, I withdrew further. That night, lying beside him in the dark, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Not love. Not anger. Detachment. The woman who once would have fought to save this marriage was gone. In her place was someone who understood a brutal truth. When someone is quietly constructing your downfall, you don't beg them to stop. You document. You prepare. You protect yourself. And for the first time in 11 years, I stopped asking how to fix us and started asking how to protect me. Once I stopped reacting emotionally, everything accelerated. Daniel must have sensed the shift because he pushed harder. Monday evening, he came home with flowers. He hadn't bought me flowers in 2 years. They reminded me of our honeymoon, he said, placing them on the counter. The perfume was familiar, white lilies. I used to love them. Now the scent made my stomach tighten. Thank you, I replied evenly. He studied me carefully, waiting for softness, for forgiveness, for reassurance. He got none. Tuesday night, he tried a different tactic. I've been feeling like you're distant lately, he said while loading the dishwasher. I'm listening, I replied. You don't ask about my day anymore. You stopped telling me about it, I said calmly. He exhaled sharply. See? That. You always flip it back on me. Flip. Interesting word. He was trying to provoke conflict. He needed visible tension. He needed emotional volatility, something he could later label as instability. I'm not flipping anything, I said quietly. I'm responding. He slammed a plate slightly harder than necessary into the rack. You used to care more. I still care, I answered, but caring requires honesty. The word hung there. Honesty. He looked away first. Wednesday, the escalation shifted from subtle to deliberate. He left his phone on the counter for once. Unlocked. Face up. Almost inviting. A text notification appeared. Unknown number. Miss you already. He was in the shower. For 3 seconds, I stared at the screen. It felt staged. Too obvious. Too careless. He wanted me to see it. He wanted a confrontation, a scene, proof that I was jealous, unstable, reactive. I picked up the phone calmly, took a photo of the screen with mine, then set it down exactly as it had been. When he came out, towel around his waist, he glanced at the phone, then at me. You look tense, he said casually. I'm fine. You sure? Yes. He watched me longer than necessary. He was confused. The bait hadn't worked. Thursday afternoon, Lisa called me unexpectedly. Her voice was hesitant. Daniel mentioned you two have been fighting a lot. We haven't, I said calmly. He said you've been accusing him of things. Accusing. So that was the story he was planting. He's free to describe it however he wants, I replied. She hesitated again. He said you've been emotionally cold. I almost smiled. Emotional coldness. After weeks of calculated withdrawal from him. Projection is a fascinating thing. Lisa, I said gently, if Daniel tells you we're struggling, believe him. But ask yourself why he needs an audience. Silence. I just don't want you both to hurt each other, she whispered. We already are, I said softly. By Friday, I knew this was no longer just about an affair. It was about narrative control. That night, he didn't come home until 11:30 p.m. No explanation, no apology. Just a quiet entrance and a casual, long day. I was sitting at the dining table with my laptop open. I need to ask you something, I said calmly. He stiffened slightly. What? Are you seeing someone else? The room felt smaller. He stared at me, then laughed. Wow. That was his response. Wow. You think I'm cheating? I'm asking. He stepped closer, voice lowering. This is exactly what I mean. You've become paranoid. Paranoid. There it was. Gaslighting. Measured. Controlled. You've been distant, he continued. Suspicious. You barely talk. And now this? I held his gaze. Answer the question. He didn't. Instead, he shifted tactics. Maybe this is why I've been unhappy, he said quietly. Living under constant suspicion. The audacity almost made me admire him. He was crafting it beautifully. If I reacted, I'd be hysterical. If I withdrew, I'd be cold. If I questioned him, I'd be paranoid. Every path led to his innocence, unless I stepped off the board entirely. "I'm not accusing you," I said softly. "I'm observing you." His jaw tightened. "That's unsettling," he muttered. "Good. It was supposed to be." Saturday morning, I left early for a walk, not to clear my head, to think strategically. If he wanted me to initiate divorce, there was a reason. Filing first changes leverage. Narrative matters. Emotional framing matters. I stopped on a park bench and stared at the lake. 11 years, and now we were maneuvering like adversaries. When I returned home, he was on the phone in the hallway, his voice low. "Just need her to snap first." I froze. The sentence was quiet, almost swallowed, but clear. I didn't confront him. I stepped back silently, heart steady, breathing controlled. That was the moment the last piece locked into place. This wasn't confusion. This wasn't emotional drift. This was engineering. He wanted me to explode, to accuse, to file, to look unstable, so he could walk away as the wounded husband who tried everything. I went into my office, opened my laptop, created a new folder. Strategic preparation, not revenge. Protection. I contacted an attorney Monday morning under the guise of a consultation. I didn't file. I gathered information. Fault-based divorce. Financial tracing. Audio admissibility laws. I wasn't emotional in that meeting. I was precise. When I returned home that evening, Daniel was cooking dinner. He smiled as I walked in. "Hey," he said warmly. Warmth. Performance. I studied him quietly. He thought he was several moves ahead. He thought I was unraveling slowly. He had no idea the board had flipped. And he certainly didn't know I had already stopped being his wife. I was now a woman preparing for war. Even strategy cannot fully silence grief. That truth hit me 3 nights later. It was past midnight. The house was dark except for the faint glow of Daniel's phone under the blanket beside me. I lay on my side, facing the wall, listening to the almost imperceptible rhythm of his typing. Tap, pause, tap, tap. A soft vibration, then silence. Then again, I didn't need to look. I knew. For weeks, I had operated with precision, collecting data, tracing transfers, documenting contradictions. I had moved like someone studying a case, not living inside it. But in that dark bedroom, something cracked. Not publicly, not dramatically. Internally. 11 years of memories began surfacing without permission. The night he held my hand in the hospital when my father went into surgery. The way he carried me across the threshold of this house, laughing. The whispered, "We'll figure it out," when we both felt overwhelmed. Was any of it real? Or had I simply loved harder? I turned onto my back and stared at the ceiling. "Why?" I whispered into the darkness. He shifted beside me, unaware. That was the cruelest part. He was sleeping next to me while actively dismantling us. The next morning, I found myself sitting at the kitchen table long after he'd left for work. The silence in the house felt different, heavy, suffocating. I opened our old photo albums, anniversaries, vacations, holidays with his parents, smiles that looked authentic. I traced one picture with my finger, us at the beach 5 years ago. He was holding my waist, looking at me like I was the only person in the world. Had that look been genuine? Or was I rewriting history now because of betrayal? My chest tightened. For a moment, just a moment, I considered abandoning the strategy, confronting him openly, demanding the truth, screaming if I had to. At least screaming would feel human. Instead, I closed the album carefully, because emotional collapse would only serve him. But understanding that didn't make it easier. Wednesday afternoon, I experienced the lowest moment of the entire ordeal. I received a notification from our joint credit account, a hotel reservation, 2 nights. This coming weekend, my pulse slowed rather than raced. Numbness is strange. It feels like strength at first, then it feels like emptiness. I sat in my office chair and stared at the screen for a full minute. 2 nights. He hadn't even waited for the divorce narrative to fully form. He was already planning time away, with her. The final illusion, that maybe this was just emotional manipulation without physical betrayal, dissolved quietly. I pressed my palm against my chest, trying to ground myself. This is happening. This is real. He came home that evening almost cheerful. "Long day?" he asked lightly, hanging his jacket. "Productive," I replied. He leaned in and kissed my cheek. His lips felt foreign. I resisted the instinct to pull away. "How's your week looking?" he asked casually. I held his gaze. "Busy." He nodded slowly. "I might be traveling this weekend." "Business?" I asked. "Yeah." The lie was smooth, practiced, effortless. Something inside me finally reached its lowest point. Not rage, not devastation, disillusionment. The man I married wasn't confused. He wasn't lost. He was comfortable lying, comfortable constructing a story in which I would appear unstable, paranoid, disconnected. And in that story, he would be the reasonable one. That night, after he fell asleep, I walked into the living room and sat on the floor. I let myself feel it fully. The grief, the absurdity of sleeping beside someone who was scheduling hotel rooms with another woman. I wrapped my arms around myself and allowed silent tears to fall. No sound, just truth. I wasn't mourning the affair. I was mourning the version of him I thought existed. And in that stillness, I faced a difficult realization. I could win strategically and still lose emotionally. Documentation wouldn't erase the hurt. Preparation wouldn't erase 11 years. But I also understood something else. If I allowed myself to break now, he would win both the narrative and the outcome. So I made a decision. I wiped my face, stood up, walked back into the bedroom, and looked at him sleeping. For the first time in 11 years, I saw him not as my husband, but as my opponent. The lowest point wasn't discovering the hotel. It was accepting that the marriage was already over and that I would be the only one leaving with dignity intact. The turning point didn't come with screaming. It came with confirmation. Tuesday afternoon, I was supposed to be in Chicago for a client meeting until Thursday. The trip was real. The tickets were booked. Daniel knew the schedule. But the meeting was canceled at the last minute. For a full minute, I stared at my phone. I could text him. I didn't. Something inside me said, "Don't announce your movements." So instead of heading to the airport, I drove home. Slowly. Calmly. When I turned onto our street, I saw it. A silver Lexus parked across from our house. Not one of our neighbors. Too unfamiliar. Too deliberate. My hands didn't shake. My pulse didn't spike. I already knew. I just needed proof. I parked in the garage like usual, entered through the kitchen quietly. The house wasn't silent. There were voices upstairs. Low. Close. Intimate. Not work. Not casual. Intimate. I didn't run up the stairs. I didn't slam doors. That's what he expected. Chaos. A scene he could later twist into, "She caught me by surprise and lost control." Instead, I pulled out my phone, pressed record, and walked toward the staircase slowly. Each step sharpened their voices. Daniel's tone was lighter than I had heard in months. Playful. Unburdened. Then I heard her laugh. Soft. Comfortable. My stomach didn't flip. My chest didn't tighten. It was almost clinical. Then I heard the sentence that changed everything. "He still thinks this is about communication," Daniel said, chuckling quietly. "I just need her to be the one who brings up divorce first." The woman responded, "Is she close?" "She's doubting herself," he said. "That's the goal. Once she files, I look like the one who tried." There it was. Not just betrayal. Engineering. Calculated, strategic. I didn't go upstairs. I didn't open the door. I stood in the hallway recording every word. And then, the final piece. "I've been laying the groundwork for weeks," Daniel added. "She's already emotionally checked out. I just need to keep pushing." The air left my lungs quietly. Not because he was cheating, but because he was weaponizing my silence. Weaponizing my trust. I stopped the recording. Saved it. Backed it up to cloud storage instantly. Then, without making a sound, I stepped outside the house and closed the door gently behind me. I sat in my car 2 houses down, hands resting on the steering wheel. Still, 11 years condensed into one cold realization. He hadn't fallen out of love. He had staged my collapse. I uploaded the file to 3 locations: cloud, encrypted drive, backup email. Redundancy wasn't paranoia. It was protection. An hour later, I returned home. I timed it precisely after the Lexus had disappeared. Daniel was in the kitchen when I walked in. He turned sharply. "You're back early," he said. "Meeting got canceled," I replied lightly, placing my keys on the counter. Oh, a flicker. Just a flicker of tension in his eyes. "I was resting," he added. "Must have been a good nap," I said calmly. "You seem refreshed." He studied my face carefully, searching for suspicion, for accusation, for anything. He found nothing. We made small talk for 10 minutes. Surface level, harmless. But underneath, everything had shifted. He thought he was ahead. He thought I was unraveling quietly. He had no idea the entire script had flipped. Because now I wasn't reacting. I wasn't defending. I wasn't doubting. I had proof. Not just of the affair, but of intent, of strategy, of manipulation. That night, he lay beside me, unaware that the power dynamic had permanently changed. He thought I was still trying to say thus. He didn't realize I was already planning the ending, and it would not be the one he wrote. Friday morning didn't feel explosive. It felt precise. Daniel was in the bathroom getting ready, humming softly. I stood in the kitchen, watching sunlight stretch across the floorboards. The calm before exposure is strange. It doesn't feel like revenge. It feels like inevitability. The night before, I had made a series of calls. His parents, my parents, Lisa, 2 of our closest friends. I didn't give details. I simply said, "I need you at our house tomorrow morning at 8 a.m. It's important." Concern travels quickly through families. By 7:55 a.m., cars were lining the curb outside. Daniel walked downstairs, adjusting his watch. "Why are there so many cars?" he asked, confused. "Sit down," I said gently. His eyes flickered with suspicion. The doorbell rang. I opened it. His parents stood there first. Behind them, my parents. Lisa. Our friends. Confusion filled the room as they stepped inside. "Sweetheart, what's going on?" his mother asked. Daniel looked between all of us. "Is this some kind of intervention?" "In a way," I said calmly. He laughed nervously. "For what?" I took my phone out. "I think it's time everyone hears the truth about why this marriage is ending." His face drained of color. "What are you doing?" he hissed quietly. "Accountability," I replied. I pressed play. His voice filled the room. Clear. Unfiltered. "She's doubting herself. That's the goal. Once she files, I look like the one who tried." The silence that followed was suffocating. His mother's hand flew to her mouth. Lisa's expression shifted from confusion to disbelief. His father didn't speak. He just stared. I played the second clip. "I've been laying the groundwork for weeks." Then the third. "She still thinks this is about communication." Daniel stepped forward. "This isn't what it sounds like." "Really?" I asked calmly. "Because it sounds exactly like strategic manipulation." His breathing became shallow. "You recorded me?" he demanded. "Yes." "You invaded my privacy." I tilted my head slightly. "You staged my breakdown." His father finally spoke. "Is this true?" Daniel opened his mouth, closed it. There was no spin left, no angle. Just audio. His mother began crying softly. "After everything she's done for you," she whispered. He turned toward me desperately. "You're humiliating me." "No," I said quietly. "You plan to humiliate me." I held up a printed copy of the hotel reservation. "Business trip?" His shoulders slumped. The room shifted from confusion to comprehension. Lisa stepped forward slowly. "You told me she was emotionally unstable," she said. Daniel didn't respond. "You made her sound cold. Detached, like she'd given up on you." I felt every eye in the room turn toward me. For once, I wasn't defending myself. The truth was defending me. His father's voice dropped low and controlled. "You had an affair." It wasn't a question. Daniel didn't deny it. He just whispered, "It's complicated." "No," I said softly. It's deliberate. Silence again. Then his father turned to him. You leave. Daniel blinked. This is my house. His father's eyes hardened. No, it's her house too. And right now, you're the one who betrayed it. He looked at me. Do you want him gone? I met Daniel's eyes. There was panic there now. Real panic. Pack a bag, I said quietly. You can't do this, he whispered. I already did. He looked around the room, searching for an ally. There were none. He walked upstairs slowly. The house felt heavier while he packed. 10 minutes later, he came down with a duffel bag. He paused at the door. This didn't have to happen this way. I studied him carefully. It didn't. And that was the final truth. He had engineered my collapse. Instead, he engineered his exposure. When the door closed behind him, the silence inside the house felt different. Not hollow. Clear. His mother approached me, eyes wet. I'm so sorry. I nodded gently. This isn't your fault. His father stood straighter. We will not defend this. Lisa looked at me with something that felt like respect. You didn't explode, she said quietly. No, I replied. I documented. They left one by one. And for the first time in weeks, I was alone, not abandoned. Alone. I walked into the living room and sat down, the couch where I had once cried silently, the space where he had whispered lies under blankets. It felt lighter. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because the narrative was no longer in his control. He wanted me to file first. He wanted to appear wounded. Instead, he left as the man who tried to manipulate his own wife into destroying herself. And that story was not one he could rewrite. 3 weeks passed. The house became quiet, but not empty. There's a difference. At first, I expected the silence to echo, to feel like loss. Instead, it felt like space. Space to breathe, space to think, space to exist without being watched, evaluated, or maneuvered. I rearranged the living room one Sunday morning. Not dramatically, just enough to feel like it was mine again. I changed the sheets, threw away the lilies, opened every window. The air moved differently. Daniel sent a few messages in the first week. Can we talk? This is getting out of hand. You didn't have to go nuclear. I didn't respond. There was nothing left to clarify. He had tried to turn my steadiness into weakness, my trust into leverage, my silence into instability. Instead, my silence became strength. One evening, I stood in front of the bathroom mirror. The same mirror where he once asked if I wondered what happiness felt like. I looked at myself carefully, not for signs of damage, for signs of truth. I wasn't broken. I was changed. There's a quiet power in refusing to collapse the way someone expects you to. He thought I would beg. He thought I would explode. He thought I would file first and confirm his narrative. Instead, I listened. I observed. I protected myself. And when the moment came, I exposed the truth without screaming. I used to believe forgiveness meant forgetting. Now I understand it means release. I don't wake up angry. I don't replay the recordings. I don't wonder what she had that I didn't, because this was never about comparison. It was about character. He revealed his. And in the process, I discovered mine. The greatest revenge isn't public humiliation. It isn't legal victory. It isn't even being right. It's walking away with your dignity intact while someone else collapses under the weight of their own deception. He tried to engineer my breakdown. Instead, he engineered my breakthrough. And for the first time in years, when I look in the mirror, I see a woman I respect. Not because she won, but because she refused to be rewritten.